So I have 2:59 and we will get started in 1 minute. Hello and good afternoon. My name is Mike Stonecipher and I'm the board chair for the Society of Automotive Engineers Atlanta. I want to welcome you to our Women in Mobility webinar. We have an amazing panel today, and plus we'll be giving out 4 $50 gift cards. Also, this webinar will be recorded and placed on our website at www.saeatlanta.org for future reference. Before we get started, I would like to share a little bit about Society of Automotive Engineers. SAE International has over 138,000 global members. In addition to its standardization efforts, SAE International devotes resources to projects and programs in STEM education, professional certification, and collegiate design competitions. Our vision is to become the leader in connecting and educating engineers while promoting, developing, and advancing aerospace, commercial vehicle, and automotive engineering. The Atlanta section has over 700 members, and we represent Georgia and Alabama as part of the international organization. We promote events and webinars such as the one you're attending today. We also support STEM, A World in Motion, and provide support for students in SAE competitions. To become a member, go to our website and look for the membership page. Professional membership is $120 per year, and student membership is $35 per year. Also, if you'd like to stay connected to the events and news that we have happening through SAE Atlanta, you can go to our homepage, and at the bottom of the homepage, there's a section you can add your name and email address, and we will keep you updated on events that we're hosting. So, our first door prize today goes to Ryan Sachs. Congratulations, Ryan. We will be sending you your $50 gift certificate and electronically. So we'll send you information on what to expect when to receive it. We will be giving out 3 more door prizes, one in about the middle of the webinar and 2 towards the end. I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Ted Arnold. He's a head of department for body and paint and quality control at Kia Motors Manufacturing in West Point, Georgia. He also has experience with Mercedes-Benz, US International, as well as Nissan Motor Company. And Ted holds a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering from Tennessee Technological University, as well as a Master of Science in Industrial Studies from Middle Tennessee State University. Ted, thank you for being our moderator today. And I'd like to just also say that's a great undergraduate school you went to. That's where I got my undergraduate degree. So we're glad you're here today. And
we got to stick together.
That's right. So I'm going to turn it over to Ted. And Ted, take it away. Excited to hear the panel discussion.
Great. Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that introduction. And yes, I think myself and all the panelists are also very excited. This is the first time that our chapter has done one of these webinars. We've done a lot of preparation. One of the highlights for me, though, is the 5 outstanding panelists that we have today are all board members of our SAE chapter. So it just shows the depth we have within our group. And everyone, I'm sure you're in for quite a treat as we discuss women in mobility. So before we get started into the question time with the panelists, let's introduce the panelists and let you get to know them just a little bit. So first we have Heather Woods. Heather is a mechanical designer and works with Honda Engineering of North America. Heather, if you would, just give us a little insight into what you've done in your career.
Hi, my name's Heather Woods. I was born and raised in a western suburb of Chicago. I went to Bradley University where I studied mechanical engineering and got my bachelor's. Immediately after I graduated, I moved to Ohio and started at Honda Engineering in Ohio. I went into affordability engineering as a model engineer and then in a tool and die department. And then I moved to the new technology group in tool and die. About 3 years after I got hired at Honda, I moved to Alabama to work for Honda there. So I've been in Alabama for about 5 years now, and I love it. Been with Honda for 8. I currently work as a mechanical designer for plant support down in Lincoln.
So next we have Jenin Sun. Jenin's a PhD and she's an innovation hub solution architect at Mercedes-Benz USA, which is now headquartered in Atlanta. Jenin, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Thank you, Ted, for the introduction. Hey, everybody. My name is Jenin Sun, and I was born and raised in China. I came over to the United States in 2012 for my graduate education. I got my MBA in entrepreneurship and innovation. So got involved in a startup company in the craft beer industry. That was very fun. And after that, I went on with pursuing a PhD in automotive engineering. During my PhD, my thesis focused on the economical impact of intelligent technology adoption in the urban mobility space, especially on the self-driving vehicles, autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, as well as car sharing models. After graduation, I joined the Mercedes-Benz USA and I work with the Innovation Hub team, lead a few digital products over at Mercedes-Benz USA, and they're consumer facing and they're out there, and we're just pushing it together, trying to make a better future. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Jenin. Well, this webinar is about mobility, and so far we've heard from automotive, but we also have a couple of ladies who are in the aerospace industry. So next, I want to introduce Amy Hudnall. She's the director at the Center of Innovation for Aerospace, which is under the Georgia Economic Development Department. Amy, tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
Thanks, Ted. As you said, I'm the director of the Center of Innovation for Aerospace. I started my career as an Air Force officer at the Air Force Flight Test Center in California, followed by a tour at Soesterberg Air Base as the liaison to the Royal Netherlands Air Force. And finally, I managed foreign military sales training programs in the F-16 at Luke Air Force Base, the largest fighter training base in the world. Along the way, I had some amazing experiences, like being in a helicopter, flying chase for the space shuttle landing, and flying supersonic in an F-16 and experiencing 9 Gs, or 9 times the force of gravity, during aerobatic maneuvers. My work at the Center of Innovation for Aerospace has been just a little more grounded. As the director, I'm responsible for a wide range of programs supporting Georgia's $57.5 billion aerospace sector. My team helps Georgia's 840 aerospace companies connect, compete, and grow in the global marketplace.
Great, thank you, Amy. Next, we have Rosella Manfrenato. Rosella is a bona fide race car driver, so we're in for a real treat to hear some things from her. I know I'm excited about that. But she currently works at Philip Creighton Motorsports and works in engineering and management there. So Rosella, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rosella Manfrenato. I was born and raised in Italy. I am a mechanical engineer specialized in vehicle dynamics, and I've always been involved in racing. I work with both manufacturers and private teams. and in both racing on ovals or road course, occasionally street course, and both in formula cars or endurance sports car racing. I'm currently working with Philip Crichton Motorsports on various racing projects and also historic cars restoration. And I am also the United States technical support for the Ferrari 488 GT racing program. Here we are racing in IMSA and SRO GT World Challenge America.
Great. And last but not least, there's Sarah Carter. Sarah works for a company called Area I, also an aerospace company where she is a purchasing administrator. Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Yeah, so I'm Sarah Carter. I'm actually currently the marketing director for Area I, recently promoted. I started with the company a couple years ago and worked my way up from purchasing and doing government property, shipping and receiving. I have a passion for marketing, so it was an easy fit and a great transition. I received my bachelor's degree from Kennesaw State, previously Southern Poly, where I was on the Formula SAE team for about 5 years, worked my way up from just a nobody freshman to becoming the first and only woman team captain as of yet, where I went on to found and establish the KSU SAE chapter. I had a really great connection with SAE Atlanta through that. So I was able to acquire a ton of really great internships in motorsports, mainly through SAE connections. So, which has led me to this moment. So one of the younger, least experienced on this board, but I've learned so much in this short amount of time. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Sarah. And we're just excited to have all of these amazing women on the panel today. So we've got some questions lined up that we're going to have some discussion with. If in the audience, if you do have questions, we will have some Q&A time at the end. And I think you can go ahead and be submitting your questions online if you need to. And then at the end, we'll have time for those questions. But first, we've got some predetermined questions that we know will spur some good discussion and good discussion points. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. First, we're going to address these questions to Amy and to Jenan. We'll get the aerospace and the automotive perspective. But what is new and exciting in your field? What is trending in your areas these days? Amy, we'll start with you.
Well, aviation is constantly evolving with the development of new technologies, and two areas of particular interest to me right now are advanced air mobility and hypersonics. Advanced air mobility is focused on electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, or eVTOL, that can move people and cargo more quickly and quietly than helicopters. There's still a lot of hurdles yet to overcome, including airspace management, social acceptance, appropriate ground infrastructure, and the certification of the aircraft, but the potential is just enormous. Whether it's UPS or Amazon delivering packages or cargo, or Uber Elevate providing air taxis, advanced air mobility applications are being tested and expanded every day. So my team is supporting the Association of Unmanned Vehicle Systems International, or AUVSI, as they prepare to hold their expo in Atlanta next year. And that'll be a fantastic showcase. If it's supersonic means faster than the speed of sound, or Mach 1, then hypersonic means going 5 times the speed of sound, Mach 5, which, as as Ted asked me yesterday, that's 3,836 miles an hour. Georgia Tech's Hypersonic System Task Force is working to advance industry capacity for hypersonic travel by addressing many of the new requirements that Mach 5 travel will entail. This extreme environment requires more heat-resistant materials, different types of guidance systems, and advanced propulsion techniques. We have 2 Georgia companies that are making real advances in hypersonics. Hermeus Corporation is partnering with the U.S. Air Force and the Presidential and Executive Airlift Directorate, working towards hypersonic travel for the Department of Defense after Hermeus successfully tested a Mach 5 engine prototype in February of this year. Yes, that means we're working towards a hypersonic Air Force One in the future. The Hermeus team designed, built, and successfully tested their Mach 5 engine prototype in just 9 months, and they're now working towards the second phase of development. One of the ongoing technical problems in the aerospace industry is the development of vehicles that are capable of sustaining hypersonic flight above Mach 5. Generation Orbit's X-60A is a small, high-speed flight testbed that's created to serve the hypersonic flight test and suborbital research communities. The A60A is an affordable, air-dropped, single-stage rocket-powered test platform that can be used to flight profiles for the high-speed flight test community. Those are a couple of the areas that I'm particularly interested in.
Well, that's really amazing. It's hard to even wrap my brain around 3,836 miles an hour. That's truly fast. Well, good. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. So, Jenna, what about the automotive field? What's new and exciting there?
So it fits in the theme really well with the mobility theme today. Talking about automotive, it's hard now to talk about smart mobility. So this is kind of a pre-COVID phase. Our global company has gone through. We worked on case connected, shared autonomous and electric vehicle initiative a lot with different partners in different regions of the world. And then during the COVID-19 period, we all got hit pretty bad in terms of we have to focus on more cash reserving. So right now we have different local initiatives we are handling here at MBUSA, and a few projects I'm currently working on. I can give you a quick introduction of it. One of them is intelligent automation, and talking about mostly robotic processing automation, machine learning, chatbot implementation. So this is to improve our process improvements and then to make processes more efficient internally. So we are implementing a lot of either attended or unattended bots at the workplace to support our full-time employees to finish their work, their day-to-day work. And the second big topic we are currently focusing on is the data topic. And I think as the automotive industry, we are a bit slower compared to the rest of the players out there in terms of tackling the data topic. One of the interesting use case we're currently handling is we don't really have a 360 degree views about our consumers from the moment they decide to buy a vehicle and then when they finish their purchasing journey, because sometimes they go on to different platforms that's owned by third party, for example, Kelly Blue Books, and then they would spend a lot of time to do online research and get those data there, and then they would pop into our dealership from online to offline. The transition is something we work on very closely with our consumers and different partners to kind of bridge that data gaps. And that's just another, data integration is another topic we are currently handling.
That's great. Sounds like an exciting time at Mercedes. Okay, we'll roll on to our next question then. This one will be Jenna and Sarah. We'll pose that to you. What's the best advice you could give to women in your industry? Jenna, I'll let you go first for that one.
Sure, absolutely. I think it comes into the most important quality. I think for me in my work position is being able to do to be a critical thinker. Critical thinking is so important. I handle innovative products for my organization, so I have been trained by so many programs to avoid cognitive biases, and that's because we want to design consumer-facing products in a way that our consumer desires, but not just the cool and then shiny-looking digital products. So you really have to be able to be a critical thinker, to train your brain to have your own thought process before you go into any meeting, and sometimes you get only one chance to pitch a new idea you have been working on so long with the entire team to your C-level or VP level of stakeholders. So you really have to lay out the thought process very clearly. And sometimes in a workplace, it's very fast paced and you don't really get to ask in every meeting, how do you feel about certain issue or how do you feel about certain topics? So I think as a woman in the industry who is handling my type of work, I really need to be a critical thinker, spend a lot of time upfront to construct my ideas and being able to clearly communicate them in meetings. And as well as I probably need to be assertive sometimes in the meetings, even nobody asks me how I feel about certain issues. I still need to kind of go in strong to say, sorry to interrupt, but I did prepare all this work and I think we need to address this topic before I move on. And this is really important to the project. So I think being a critical thinker and being able to deliver a message and in a very appropriate way to your team is important advice I would like to share today.
That's great. And that is absolutely important in lots of fields, and different genders. That's also important for the males. Okay, Sarah, what do you think about that? What's some of the best advice you could give, possibly even to some of the younger women who might be or beginning to enter the industry of mobility, being aerospace or automotive? You recent graduate from college and been in the workforce for a little while now, but still on the front end. So what kind of advice would you give?
I would definitely say come into the workforce by being very humble. Try not to have that, quintessential chip on your shoulder. Put your head down and be ready to work. Always say yes to any task that comes your way because there's usually something you can learn from it, even if it doesn't seem directly relevant or it's not necessarily a part of your job description. Things like that can lead to networking opportunities, helping people out. Definitely find a great female mentor. There's a ton in SAE, as I have experienced. It's a really great resource to keep honing back on that. And don't be afraid to reach out and find small companies or startups to go into. You don't necessarily have to pick the big heavy hitters. Smaller companies and startups, you tend to have way more opportunities to grow at a faster pace than you would. You might be able to put your hands more in different projects that necessarily you wouldn't have the opportunity to do at Boeing or something like that. I would just say also, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just make sure you learn from those. Share your thoughts, speak your mind, but pick your battles. It's really just about the mindset that you have going into any situation. Try to make it as positive as you can. So that would definitely be my advice.
That's very good. You've learned a lot since you've been out there working, haven't you? Obviously. So that's great advice. And, I agree with you too. Maybe starting out with a smaller company, you take on more responsibility than you would with a big mega company. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think your track to learning is probably accelerated more when you have many of these tasks to take on and more hats to wear. So that's some great insight. Thank you so much for those comments. Okay, next we'll hear from Rosella and Heather. What excites you in your role and what new technology is being used in your field? Rosella, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Well, there is obviously a lot of excitement in racing, and when the green flag drops at the race, adrenaline flows. We always want to beat the competition, always trying to go faster. We try to stay grounded with what surrounds us, and so there is interaction between the road cars and the racing vehicles. It may be materials that we can test and then get applied to everyday cars, or can be components that we actually have to use even by sanctioning bodies regulations. And we can look around us and maybe see where we are heading, even with hybrid vehicles or even electric cars, and try to actually race some of them. Obviously, like I said, the performance is our main exercise. and we test these components at the limit, whether it is lifing, and then back it off, obviously, if they get applied to different use. We do a lot of simulations, even when the vehicle is ready. We use wind tunnel testing. That can be done on a full-scale car. So we put the full vehicle on a big wind tunnel, or it can be done on a scaled-down model. Actually, one on my shoulders, that's one of them. And usually it's 40%, and we can test a variety of aerodynamic adjustments that we have on our hand when we are at the track to change the car attitude. We put the cars on post-test rig, and can be the full car again on a platform, or can be components such as dampers. And also simulator have done a big improvement in recent times. So the simulators can be a help for drivers to get acquainted to the tracks, even track that they don't know or they haven't been to. And also for engineers. And now that the simulators have a better model of both the track, there's been a lot of it has been now measured and laser scan, or also the model of the car. So we can actually do modification to the setup prior to going to an event and actually simulate stuff. The vehicles are heavily instrumented once we get to the racetrack, and we use data acquisition systems. Different manufacturers provide those, and even integrated with videos. We also have telemetry, which is real-time data stream from the car, and we can look at it while the car is running, and that helps us either fix some issues very quickly. If we see something, we react immediately, or we can make it quicker to improve the car, checking what is going on while it's running, and then call it to the pit and make changes so we get back to our performance again.
That sounds really exciting. So do you get to spend much time in the simulators?
Some of us do. I did some, but mostly what I do is at the track right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if we get ideas on what we can actually test, we communicate that.
Great. I bet you're hard to beat on video games, aren't you? Okay, well, thank you. Let's see. So, Heather, what about you? What excites you in your role, and what new technology is being used in your field?
Man, if only I could say I'm also a race car driver, that would be fantastic. But unfortunately, I cannot. However, Honda does do a lot in racing. Even just as my role as an engineer, there are associate-led race teams that Honda has at many different plants. So that's pretty cool. But I, again, unfortunately, am not one of those people. But my passion and what excites me about my role is that I get to meld my creative side with my math side. So I always kind of fought that growing up of like which side's going to win, and my job lets me do both. So, you know, I start off with just a crazy idea in my head on how to solve a problem, and then I do, you know, go into 3D and kind of make it in my virtual world. I use some, you know, FEA or finite element analysis in order to prove out what my crazy idea is, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But when it does work, you go to the, you know, 2D drawings, and then you go and see it on the floor. So that's the first realization of your idea, right? You go from just an idea to it being a physical thing, and then you get to see it in action, and you get to see all your crazy ideas actually working on the floor, which that's true for many engineering fields or many STEM fields, but that's really just that idea gets me super excited about my role. It makes me feel very proud in what I do. So in checking, particularly the FEA versus real life, I think that's really interesting to see how models can relate and how things can flow. So at Honda, we normally use CATIA or SolidWorks. So I'm very CATIA heavy with both my FEA analysis and with my 3D and 2D drawings. So that's, I say my CATIA land is where I thrive most days when I'm at work. So for example, if I'm making a robot cell, I'll, you know, drop some robots in the cell and have the car body and I have to make sure the robots can reach what they're supposed to, that they're capable of doing it. Are they strong enough? Are they fast enough to get through the line so we can pump those cars out? You know, and you can see all that prior to having something built. So I just think that's an interesting experience to have something go from just this virtual world into creation. And then another technology that I really like personally, I got started when I first started Honda, is optical metrology, which is basically this analysis using cameras. So for example, I started in the stamping world. What we would do is take a flat sheet of metal, the sheet metal before it's made into a part, and use electroetching, so using electricity to make a pattern on this metal, and it would hit with the die, and then you get the part. Well, then you can use cameras to analyze the pattern and how it changed to get the stresses, the strains, the thickness, any deform analysis that you wouldn't really see anyway. You'd have to do a lot of different calculations or cut up the sheet metal to see that otherwise. So that's pretty interesting to me that we have all this data now at our fingertips just using something as simple as cameras. With that technology, you can also see things like vibrations. So if we're getting a lot of noise, wind noise in a car, and you can see when you slam a car door, how the car door changes, how that moves, using those cameras that maybe wouldn't be obvious to the naked eye. So things like that I think are really, really fascinating. They're easy to use tools, they're readily available. Overall, having an idea in my head and, you know, a couple months, maybe even a year later, coming out and seeing it function exactly how you planned and fighting for that idea, because no matter along the way, nobody's going to agree with you 100% about all these ideas. So it's really interesting to me to have a more out of the box idea and then fighting for what you believe in and being able to prove it with math and with simulations, and then see it come to life and see it be successful. So that's kind of what gets my heart going about my job.
That's great. It gives you a little ownership and a little pride, I guess, when you see your vehicles on the road.
Absolutely. Every time I see one go down, I kind of give it a little like, woo-hoo.
That's great. Thank you, Heather. Well, we've come to the part of our time here where we want to give away another door prize. First of all, too, I want to say thank you to everyone, to all the participants that have joined us. Looking at our number, looks like we've got a full house. So we're really excited and we appreciate your time and attendance through this. So with that being said, our next gift card winner is Allison Giddens. Congratulations, Allison, on being the big winner of the $50 gift card. All right, rolling along then, we'll get into our next question. This one for Amy and Rosella. What have been some of your biggest challenges in your career? Amy, we'll start with you.
Well, although it's changed tremendously for the better, one of my biggest challenges at the start of my career was just the lack of diversity in my field. We didn't have any senior women to act as mentors. We just had to kind of band together and figure it out for ourselves. So I started my aerospace career as an Air Force officer way back in 1983, just about 10 years after the Reserve Officer Training Corps opened to women. It seemed ordinary enough to me at the time, but looking back, I realized I was still pretty much at the forefront of women in the regular armed services. We made up far less than 10% of the officer corps. So during my first assignment at the Rocket Propulsion Laboratory at Edwards, I was one of only 3 women line officers on a base of about 6,000 people. Although there were women doctors and dentists and nurses at the hospital, they were just largely out of sight during my regular workday. When I transferred to my second base, there were 15 women out of a group of 150 officers, and we just thought we had died and gone to heaven, that we were like the sorority brat pack. It was wonderful to have some other people to share that experience. And to give you some perspective, today, women make up about 21% of the officer corps in the Air Force. So being a woman officer on base at that time was a lot like living in a fishbowl, and it felt more than a little bit isolating. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who worked so hard to ensure women's equality, had said, so often in life, the things that you regard as an impediment turn out to be great good fortune. And that was certainly the case for me. I used that sense of isolation to help me make intentional connections, put myself into situations that provide opportunities to build relationships, whether it's professional organizations like SAE or the Junior Officers Council. It's always a little bit easy to hang back when you feel like an outsider for whatever reason. My challenge to you is to explore how you can make the connection for yourself and for others. So that first Air Force job at the laboratory was a bit singular, as I was in a command position and one of the few people that wasn't a scientist or an engineer. I had to really look for ways to connect and build connections with my coworkers. And after a short time, I realized that the whole organization actually needed to build closer relationships with the main base, since we were 30 minutes across the dry lake bed. Laboratory workers had a hard time negotiating just everyday appointments on the base because of the distance. And since the laboratory was under a separate major command from the main base, people didn't really understand our mission. So I organized a large team that put together a laboratory open house to bring base personnel and community leaders to the laboratory as a way to build awareness of our mission and to help people understand that distance from the main base. I also learned another really important skill, which is to ask people about their work. Ask people to tell you about their work. Some of the folks that I originally perceived as stodgy and disinterested became really enthused about the opportunity to share their work with a wider audience. And you need to remember that these people were literally rocket scientists. So most of their demonstrations involved large explosions. They were real excited about that. But in the end, by engaging other organizations and really developing some familiarity with one another, we strengthened the connections between the base. We convinced the main base to better accommodate the needs of the laboratory personnel. And that work even contributed to an Air Force Unit Award. Overall, that open house team built friendships and professional associations that have lasted all these years since. So it was a great opportunity to turn that impediment around.
Very good. It sounds like a great career. I'm sure we could go on and on with some of your stories from your military time. Okay, Rosella, what have been some of your biggest challenges?
Well, there are a lot of challenges in racing, just given the nature of the sport. And some of them can be just even ordinary daily routine for somebody. But for example, for us, if we prepared everything for the weekend and we tested, we got a good setup, something as an ordinary thing as rain can just change everything for us. And we have to throw out the window some of the work we have done preparing and start over. So we need, what I think we have done is preparing and acting to prepare for events and what can happen on track, try to simulate what can go on a race and what the strategy is taking us to, but then we have to be very ready to react. If issues arise, we have to be very quick in diagnose it and fix it. So those are certain challenges that all of us face. I can't deny that I had some personal challenges being in a male-dominated sport. I work harder, I think. You always have to work a little bit harder to establish yourself and to get the respect from your peers. And, you know, sometimes to keep the mobility going, you have to find creative solutions. And so that may be even to get from something that the sanctioning body is requiring or to issue a riser along the way. The good thing that I found when I started is that the card doesn't really know if you're a male or a female. I think that I don't want to sound superficial. When I decided I wanted to be in racing because I loved it. I had a passion for it. And so I didn't stop thinking whether I was going to be a diversity. Then obviously when you get to the ground, you realize that you are. But like I said, the good thing is that the car doesn't really know. So whenever I engineer or I drive, for me, it was just, I felt like either one of them, a driver or an engineer. I didn't think about the diversity aspect of it. It's not easy. And I think that you do it if you have a passion for it, because it's not an easy work environment for anybody, especially at the track with the long hours and sometimes very difficult conditions. But everybody kept telling me how difficult it was to get into racing, and nobody actually told me how difficult it is to get out of racing. So I got addicted to the racing, and once I got into it, I think I got hooked, and I'm in for good.
That's great. Okay, we'll go on to our next question for Sarah and for Heather. Why do you think younger females don't pursue STEM careers? Sarah, we'll let you kick this one off.
It's a really good question, and a hard question, honestly. I really just thought back on my experience of how I transitioned and started into engineering and switched into business, but still kind of tethered within marketing and STEM. And I think a lot of it has to do with just what women, as far as my generation, was exposed to when we were younger, the predisposition of doing chores in the house versus being outside, and maybe getting some exposure to, tools, or getting your hands dirty, or just any kind of hands-on activity. And I think about how if I had never gone to Petite Maman in 2010 and met the Formula SAE team, I would have never switched into engineering and all of that stuff. I think it can just be very intimidating for some, especially I know I was. So I just was lucky to have a lot of really great teammates that didn't really necessarily look at me as just a girl. They just looked at me as a teammate. And I think just finding a way to, again, network and connect with people to make you feel comfortable to learn. I think that's the most important aspect of getting girls to stay involved in STEM, or really just inspiring them to stay in STEM. And to Amy's point, that is one of the key problems I feel like that we face is there's not a lot of women in leadership positions in these STEM fields, which could be, a mentor or some way of inspiring a girl to pursue that type of career path. I think we're doing a lot of good things to make, these changes as far as F1 in schools and really hitting those kids, early on. All of the VEX robotics things that are happening, just getting more hands-on projects in the lower grades to really just capture those people. I know when I was involved in SAE, we did a ton of volunteer and outreach, and we visited all of these middle schools, elementary schools, and really tried to connect and grab their attention with race cars and all the stuff we were doing. So I think it's a group effort. I think organizations like SAE are doing a really good job of trying to turn that page and get more women involved. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Very, very good. Heather, what about you? Why do you think younger females don't participate or pursue STEM careers?
Yes, Ted, exactly what Sarah was saying. I mean, it's tough to look out there and not see a ton of role models like you. So, in high school, I went through like 4 years of technical classes because, drafting, mechanical drafting, AutoCAD, stuff like that. And I was the only female. And then in college, I was one of 5 females in a graduating class of about 85. And even now at Honda, I'm the only female in my division of 40, 50 people. So while I have my own bathroom, so that's nice. So there's some perks and some, fun things about it, but it's really sometimes ostracizing, and you feel like the spotlight's on you and you feel like the pressure's on, even maybe when it's not. Maybe other people don't feel that way, but there is kind of that pressure associated. So it's odd because actually the wage disparity has gone down. So we've been getting more equal pay and whatnot, but the amount of women in STEM fields has recently dropped. So this is a problem that's very current. Some people say, it's not a problem anymore. They don't see it as an issue, but it's still an issue. And as Sarah mentioned, a lot of that has to do with stereotypes and confidence. I mean, it can be hard to look up to people and they're not like you. You don't think that you fit, or you don't think that you act that way. You don't think that you have those kind of skills. And actually, there's a lot of studies showing that females lose confidence in their math skills by around 3rd grade, where boys don't. And their scores are the same. It's just a confidence level, and it's just a confidence issue that for some reason females seem to have that boys don't. So in college, I got my job at Honda about a semester before I graduated. And personally, I made a conscious decision that I'm going to graduate and I'm going to go to this new state where I don't know anybody, and I'm going to be who I want to be, and I'm going to be myself. And maybe that doesn't look like what I thought it was supposed to look like, or thought that I'm supposed to act like, but I have to do what I'm passionate about, and I have to be myself. Otherwise, no one else can be me but me, right? So what I learned there is being different is a strength. It's not necessarily something to be fearful of. So what can we do to help to support those young girls to come up and see that, engineering and STEM fields are a great place to be? Really, we need to be the example. We need to be the stereotype. We need to break that and show younger girls that they can do it, that they have every right to be confident in their skills, that anybody else does. Sarah mentioned a bunch of different organizations that help hit the schools early. Goldie Blocks is a toy that was released a couple of years ago that targets young girls to show them, building blocks and stuff isn't just for boys, it's for girls too, and really focuses in on how girls think to utilize that. We just need to encourage the next generation that they can go after what they want. They can pursue their passions regardless if they only see boys doing it right now. We have a lot of inspiring women on this panel that I'm so fortunate to be next to or speaking with today that are great role models for these generations. So just getting the word out there that there are these people in industry that are doing these jobs, I think is really the biggest thing. And show the confidence and be unapologetic. If you ever notice, it feels like females are so much more apologetic in general, just for being there than men are. So just stop being apologetic for being awesome and really own what you do and what your passions are. So, there's a lot of organizations just for female and STEM fields, like Society of Women Engineers, Women in Manufacturing, that are doing great work. And then there's also a lot of different organizations that target just kids, male or female, like I believe A World in Motion. Ted, you are actively involved in that, aren't you?
Yes, I have been involved with the AWIM, or the SAE, A World in Motion. In fact, the picture that you'll see on the screen now is a snapshot from one of our events that's held in Atlanta. At this event, this World in Motion event, 500 fifth graders from the Atlanta area come and compete in what's called a jet toy competition. SAE provides a kit, and they design these balloon or air propelled toys in distance contests, in time contests, in accuracy contests. And over the past few years, the big winners have been all female teams. And to watch them work is really inspiring. Then I'm not sure they even realize what they're doing, but they're showing teamwork, they're showing problem solving, they're showing design changes on the fly to perfect the performance of their cars. So they do a great job. As you said, that we've just got to figure out how to keep that going into industry. But it is a very worthy activity, and we just want to support that in any way we can. Well, thank you, Heather. That's really good comments. Okay, we've got one more scripted question before we move into our Q&A. So, Amy, would you talk to us some about the challenges of being a leader?
So here's the big challenge that I had in being a leader, was that I realized when you guys put me in this position, just that how old I am, that I'm the oldest one here and have been in the industry long enough to be a leader. Today, we have lots of women role models in leadership positions in the aerospace industry. Marilyn Houston was the CEO at Lockheed for years. Astronaut Sandy Magnus was the CEO of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, the largest professional group in aerospace. What I find challenging is that while women have made great advances in entering and succeeding in traditionally male-dominated fields, that there's still enough gender bias to be discouraging and for us to be having this conversation. Dealing with these gender stereotypes just takes energy that could be better directed somewhere else. I believe that our best teams are diverse teams that represent different viewpoints and experiences. I've worked with all men, I've worked with all women. I really think there's huge value in having a diverse team. Well over 20% of engineering graduates are women, only about 13% of practicing engineers are women. And compared with other skilled professions, engineering has the highest turnover rate for women. And in many cases, what they credit an unfriendly working environment or fewer opportunities to advance and develop as their reason for leaving the engineering profession. So I think that we would benefit. So many of these women, and I know a lot of engineers who have taken the engineering skills that they learned and are using it in a different area, and that's fine. But we have so much happening now. I just would like to see more women staying in the industry. I'm really fortunate to sit on a lot of on several local and national aerospace board of directors. And most of them are pretty diverse with a strong representation of women and intentional representation of women. More than once in attending social events related to these, people assume that my husband is the board member instead of me. And it's gotten to be kind of funny because people have these long involved conversations with him. And he's in the aerospace industry, he's a pilot. And so he just goes along with it, for a long time until he finally says, I'm just the arm candy here, and but it never fails to get me. And I have to say that it goes both ways. I have a friend who's the director of nursing, and he still is introduced as a male nurse. He's a male nurse. And it's just a bad habit that we all need to drop. I think let's just focus on people's accomplishments and experiences and leave out all the gender modifiers. So that's one of the challenge. That's a big challenge for me. It's a frustration.
Well, that's great. That provides some unique insight that I think we can all appreciate. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Amy. And thank you to all the panelists. That ends our scripted question, but it also brings us to our next drawing and gift card giveaways. So this time we're going to do 2. So we'll dig down into the box of entries here. And the next name is Melissa Young. Congratulations, Melissa, for winning the $50 gift card. And while we're paused here to do this, we'll go ahead and give the last one away. And the last gift card today goes to David Mims. Congratulations, David. You're the winner of the last $50 gift card today. All right, so that brings us into our Q&A time. And looks like we've got several questions that have come across the screen here in the chat session. So ladies on the panel, since these aren't scripted, I'll kick it off with one of you, but if you've got something to say, some particular interest in one of these questions, please just go ahead and speak your comments, and we will get through these questions. We've still got about 30 minutes left to handle these, and we've got some good questions that's come in. So one of the topics has come in from more than one of our participants. They want to know about how COVID-19 has affected our businesses. What delays or what setbacks are you experiencing, maybe with technology advances? do you think it will permanently impact your industry? So Rosella, I've heard a lot about racing in the news and how that's COVID's affect it. Have you had anything directly affect you from the COVID?
Yes, of course, as everyone else, motor racing has been affected greatly. We actually in the United States were the ones that could fit in a couple of races at the beginning of the year. We have the 24 Hours of Daytona, which is a classic in the US, and that runs in January. And we were able to actually run that event. And we also ran a race at Circuit of the Americas in March. But then we've been in lockdown. And so that obviously lasted for about 3-4 months, in which we weren't allowed to go to keep events. And we restarted racing in July, and that meant a compressed schedule for the year. So now we're trying to fit in 9 months in about half of that time, with a lot of racing to catch up and having multiples sometimes during the same weekend to make it up for it. And also it meant that some of the introducing of different models or different regulation for the next generation has been delayed, and probably by a year at this point, and what had to be introduced in 2022 might now shift to 2023. And then we'll see when we actually start next season, because besides this, the difficulties of actually having people at the track. We have a different protocol this year from what we've always had. We have essential personnel attending and working the event. And also we had some event taken in private. I mean, those spectators allowed. Right now we have spectators in some of the events, but they still cannot get to the paddock as they used to, or have autograph sessions as they were accustomed to. So we hope that actually is gonna improve again in 2021, but for sure, this situation has impacted us more.
You know, racing's all about the fans, right?
Exactly.
So when you don't have any fans, that puts a big impact on your industry and your
It
sport.
is. I was pleased though that we just had a 6-hour race at Road Atlanta, and we had spectators there camped out. And thank you for everyone that came out, because there were a lot of you out there. And we're still gonna have another 10-hour race, the Petit Le Mans, next month. So at that event, there also should be spectator, although probably not allowed inside the paddock again. But we try to put up a good race and a good event.
Okay. Is anyone else experiencing anything specific due to COVID, and do you think it'll be lasting in your industry?
Something interesting just being in the production environment, people didn't stop buying cars, which I assumed they would. I'd assume people would kind of take a relax on buying cars, but no, we're still selling. The problem was with the manpower. I mean, we have 5,500 people at our location, just our location alone in Alabama, and people just weren't showing up. And when we need that much manpower, it was hard to continue to meet, the demands of the public. I was surprised, but with childcare, being a hot issue, and just people being sick or being worried about being exposed, it was hard to get the manpower to keep everything running. But it was very interesting that people were still buying so many cars in such a pandemic. So that was good, good and bad. That was how at least we were affected.
All right.
So
go ahead.
I just say aerospace has been, impacted heavily across all of our segments in, whether it's manufacturing. Airbus and Boeing have both cut back on manufacturing. Air transportation has obviously, been significantly impacted, and maintenance, repair, and overhaul is also been cut down. So we think it's going to be several years until things return to normal. We've lost a lot of experience. Delta had 17,000 people take early retirement. And I saw a quote that said those 17,000 people took 400,000 years of experience with them. Wow. So big impact in our industry, but it's resilient. It'll come back. It just might be a little uneven as we do so.
True. Okay, another theme from some of the questions we're seeing, I see it in several of the questions. Here's one, it's a good one. It said, is there something you wish someone would have told you when you started your career that you would like to tell other women?
Be stubborn. I was lucky to be stubborn, I guess. I think that I found something I loved and I wanted to pursue it, and it wasn't easy, but I think that if you put your mind to it and you just pursue what your passion is and what you love, I think you can achieve it. And especially at the beginning, it wasn't easy for me because there were less female that I can see now in racing, and I am very pleased to see more of us out there in all capacity, from drivers to mechanic, engineers, everything, not PR, everything, every field. And at the beginning, it wasn't like that. And when I first attended the 24 Hours of Daytona, and I was the first female engineer in the pit lane, there certainly was this pressure. And so I think that there's the encouragement, just pursue what you love, because that gives you an advantage, and just work to be harder, to just be the best that you can be regardless of the gender.
Very good. Okay, so another one, we've seen a couple of questions regarding this, and I think this is a big one here for all the ladies. I think it's safe to say that all of our panelists work in a male-dominated industry. What advice would you give to other ladies on how to deal with males in the industry that maybe don't give you your due? Amy, you want to start with that one?
I would echo what Rosella said, in that, you know, you have to be confident in your own capabilities, and you have to project that. And sometimes you have to speak, you know, sometimes you have to repeat things. Sometimes you have to be a little more emphatic, and you can't take it too personally. I don't think in most cases it's intentional. So just don't back down. Don't. And women, we do that to ourselves. I think it was Heather that said, you know, the way that we say things is sometimes not as direct as men. So we say, well, what would you think it would be okay if we did? You know, you phrase things differently. And I just say, be a little bit more directive, a little bit more straightforward in the way that you speak.
Okay. Jenna, did you have something to add?
Sure. I think for me, it's a slightly different situation. Our ratio of male female is pretty good because we're a sales and marketing focused company. But I think just like Amy said, be very direct and be assertive, and just really be authentic, sharing what you mean in the meetings. That's so important, because we see a lot of young graduates who just join the company. Sometimes they don't feel really comfortable. They feel uncomfortable sharing their thoughts in meetings, and they pull you aside after meeting to say, hey, I was thinking something, but I didn't know if it was good for me to share or not. It happens in all genders. So I think just trust yourself. There is a reason you are in the room, and just speak up your mind and apologize if you feel like you have gone too far, or, you know, read the room a little bit, but definitely don't be shy with your opinion.
Great. Yes, Heather.
I just want to add to that. Those are fantastic answers, but I think another key to that is mentorship. I think it was touched on before, is just finding somebody who you can bounce ideas off of, because I think they will lead you in a good direction as far as how you're being perceived, like your tone. If they think you're being too meek, too reserved, it's a good person to bounce that off of, is finding a solid mentor. It doesn't have to be a female mentor. Maybe they can help a little bit to navigate those nuances of being a female and male dominated industry. But I think just mentorship in general is a great way to make sure that your presence is taken seriously, that you can overcome any sort of gender gaps that you feel is happening in the workplace. I know at Honda we have women's groups. We have Women Powering Honda that is great for bouncing ideas off of people and kind of understanding that I don't necessarily work with any of these women, but I can use them as resources throughout the company. So it doesn't have to be somebody sitting next to you every day. Just find those people that you can talk to and can really bounce ideas off of and ask those questions of, you know, how did this sound? Does this sound okay? If you're feeling insecure about something before you go into a meeting.
Yes, I agree with you, Heather. And especially if you find actually even a male mentor, it's always very good and actually bounce off what they feel and what they think. I think it's very important to get a perspective from that side, not necessarily just stick together between females, although it's very good and positive. Sometimes you also need to confront yourself with the male that is in the work environment. And for me, it has paid off, taught me different things. And now I think that the biggest compliment is when I'm in a team and somebody just speaks out and maybe they say, oh, watch out or something because I'm around. They says, oh, she's one of the guys. And I think that at that point, that's the biggest compliment they can pay you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Rosella is saying. I think one thing that's really worked for me is having a passion for motorsports on the side. And just in every industry I've been in company, there's always car guys. And it's something that I try to do is just make a connection with every single person I work with and kind of learn things that they're interested in or hobbies. Just making little networks because you can always rely on them. And like you guys said, having a great male mentor, someone that you feel comfortable with, asking for help, you know, asking for questions that you might not necessarily want to pose to the group in a meeting, you know, just making sure you feel comfortable in the environment that you're in. So.
All right, great. Okay, ladies, we've got some men in the audience too that are asking questions, and they go something like this. What advice do you have for the men? What can we do as male co-workers or managers to manage our female counterparts more comfortably and make them successful?
I'd like to start this, if that's okay.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Sarah.
I really appreciate what Area I does. We have a really good mixture of guys and girls. We have a ton of really great women here. And as the photographer for most of the company photos, one thing that I've run into continuously is that there's a pull between making sure that we're showing that we actually have females working here and that they're highlighted. But at the same time, the females don't necessarily want to be highlighted. They don't want really me going out of my way to take their picture or share things about them on social media. They really just kind of want to be in the background and treated like everybody else, kind of like Rosella was saying about feeling a part of the team. So I think it's really just about knowing the atmosphere and how different people are feeling, but I think it's more or less about just making them feel like everyone else. They don't necessarily, we don't want to feel like we're different just because we're a woman. We just want to feel like we're here because of the qualifications, just like everybody else. Advice.
Heather?
So to add on to what Sarah was saying, I know when I first started at Honda, as one of the only females, I know I would go into meetings and if somebody would use foul language, they'd apologize specifically to me for using foul language, which kind of, it singled me out because it's not like I haven't heard a curse word before. You know, I was an adult, I wanted to be taken seriously, and I wanted to be treated like the rest of the people in the group. I'm not saying I wanted to fade in the background, but I just wanted to be treated the same and not have any special considerations for something as silly as, you know, how somebody speaks. Given like if somebody was feeling offensive, they could, you know, apologize to the group, but they were just apologizing to me because I was the only female. So I think just treating people and not assuming that they need anything different. And if you're feeling like maybe they do, just talking to them and just asking a blatant question like, hey, you know, do you need this X, Y, and Z? And then if they say no, just drop it. Just treat them like everybody else.
I want to share a little bit about this one as well, because I actually want to give a shout out to one of my teammates, David. We worked together for many years, and he's very good at reading the cues of, you know, not only female or female and male coworkers when people use words like I disagree or I'm particularly worried about certain things. And those are the things we would pay attention as a team to pull people aside afterwards to say, let's address your worry. Let's talk about the disagreement. How can we, go forward from here? We kind of don't let, disagreement leave the room or trying to settle on the spot. And we have built a very healthy team culture. We call it unconditionally positive regards. It took a very long time for our team to get there, but we read books like Principle from Ray Dalio, talk about what are the work principles. And we read books like from Brene Brown, talk about vulnerabilities altogether, watch podcasts and stuff like that. But finally, we agree that when we challenge each other or when we agree with each other in meetings, it's all come from a good place. That's why it's called unconditionally positive regards. So with that culture being set up in place, it has made the collaboration so much easier afterwards. And I just want to share that piece.
Very good. Okay, any other comments? All right, a couple more good questions here. We still got some time. Here's a good one. Is there something you wish someone would have told you when starting your career that you would like to tell other women?
We did.
I think
If you think back to those early days when you started, what do you wish you would have known then that you know now?
I think we actually touched on that already, Ted. Did you want to maybe choose a little bit different question?
Okay. How about this? What are the biggest skill gaps you see in new graduates entering automotive careers? And how do you bridge those gaps? And I think the same would apply for our aerospace leaders too.
I could talk about it, I guess, touch on it a little bit. I deal with some of the resumes. We all wear a lot of hats at Area I, particularly with the internship program that we have. I think it's just really important for students to get involved in anything, especially Formula SAE. I attribute all of my success to that. Wouldn't be here in this room if it wasn't for that. But even if it's just ASME or anything, any type of organization that you can put where you put some kind of hands-on experience or apply the information or knowledge that you get from school into a hands-on setting. I think that's really important because it's really just about making those mistakes early on and learning from them so you don't have to make mistakes like that with your employer. And then just learning how to work with different people, social settings, stuff like that. So my advice is just to get involved in as many things as you can. If not, get a part-time job at least, even if it's just work study. I think it's really important to show that, you're willing to put in hours for something and you can get up early and do the whole thing. So that would be my advice.
Yes, I support it too. I think it is. It's very important. Even us in racing, we see that we do internship, like Sarah is saying, and just getting your hands on early and just get some experience. And in the background is even better because you can have the chance to observe a lot of stuff and learn and just think ahead of what you would do if you were in the leadership position, which can be as the engineer, the strategist, the crew chief, whatever it's gonna be. Just start in a junior position, but just always think as if you were in the highest position, what you would do. There is an issue, there is a change to be made, there is something to improve, what would you do? And just think ahead and learn in that position where you can have the ability to actually learn without putting yourself on the line right away. And then when you get into the workforce, you are better prepared.
Very good. Okay, we got time for just a couple more questions and we're going to have to wrap it up. One question asks, what are the most effective ways to recruit female or women, particularly college students, to join SAE or to apply for jobs within the mobility industry? What would attract them to your industry? Tough questions, huh?
Yeah.
Really, so I guess I'll jump in. When I was going through the process and I was looking at different career fields or different companies, one thing that I love to do is going to job fairs and talking with a lot of different companies. And me personally, I found that when a company was trying to get to know me as a person and not just what my resume said, that was something that attracted me, and travel. If someone told me that I could travel a lot, I also liked that. But you know, I was recruited by, like I said, Honda. Honda's were the only company I've been with since I graduated college. But the reason why I trended towards them is because the recruiter passed along a lot of my personal information we had in conversation to the person who did my interview. So I was able to really feel connected to the company, even a big company like Honda. I was able to feel like they care about me as a person.
I guess that would be true in any industry too, but that's an excellent point. Anyone else want to chime in on that one?
I could, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I would just say as far as like getting women involved in Formula SAE or organizations like that, and from that, pulling them into the industry, I think it would just be important to show that it's not just about working on the car or working on that exact part. I started as business and marketing, moved into recruitment, and then we needed composites when I was team captain, and nobody could do it. So I started learning how to do composites. And that's really what drew me in and got my hands dirty and started to build that confidence of putting my hands on the car and learning how to machine and everything like that. So I think it's just important to show that these organizations are run like a business and there's a place for everybody. It doesn't matter what your major is, you can be biology and no one really cares, you know, as long as you're willing to show up, put in the effort and the time, you know, and that will translate into helping you get into a career, just showing that you're willing to do anything, that you're a team player, that you have a good work ethic. So I think a lot of those can translate over between. So.
Very good. One thing, I know I'm not a panelist, but I'll chime in anyway. We utilize a lot of co-op students at Kia, and that has been an excellent venue for a couple of reasons. One, it brings students into the working environment and they get a chance to see what they might like to do. But also it gives them a chance to understand exactly what it is, and it may be what they don't want to do, which is important at that stage in your career as you're looking for a job. But co-op is a great thing, and we get so much benefit as a company from the co-op students as well. And I'll add one other thing. One of the other questions talked about the biggest skills gaps with graduates in entering automotive or whatever field. And you may be a little surprised at my answer. It's not the technical side, but it's the soft skill side. Being able to come in and work on a team, being able to come in and work cross-functionally with other departments is where I see a gap and where some strengthening needs to be as far as people entering. Just being able to get along with others and follow directions. So soft skills are also important, just like the technical skills are. So ladies, go ahead.
Sorry, I want to quickly touch on that. It's like Ted and Sarah, you guys read my mind. So the co-op program is so important. We don't have an official co-op program in my company, but my team does. We hire about 3 to 4 interns per semester. And the combination is we have 1 full stack developer, 1 UI UX designer, and 1 business strategy person. And they're all interns. We work with them, and 3 of the students would work as a small team to come up with new digital ideas and to target, get commercialized. So I think being able to work closely with students before graduation is a great experience, especially they gain so much understanding about your organization. And afterwards, how could you let them go like that? You have to keep them within the organization. And especially within the interns I worked with, I think the ones who have been really proactive in leadership in terms of leading the team to go a certain direction, or trying to check in your milestones, those are the ones we paid a lot of extra attention because they're willing to go to the extra mile to see what's the next consequences and to, protect the organization. And also, they're also the ones who are kind of on the lunch floor having conversations with different employees to tell me more about the area you work on, and I'm interested in that. And those are the ones we tend to stay with the organization a bit longer after the internship.
Okay. Any final comments from the panel before we wrap it up? I want to thank all the panelists. You ladies did a super job, and we really appreciate that. So Mike, we're drawing near to the end of our time, so I will turn it over to you to wrap it up then.
Great. Thank you, Ted. And I want to thank all the participants today, the attendees, the SAE members that make this possible, each of the panelists, Heather, Jenon, Amy, Rosella, Sarah, just very insightful and very much appreciative of the discussions and the candidness that you all had today. I'm also proud to say that all 5 of the panelists serve on the SAE Atlanta board, and great job. So with that being said, just another reminder, learn more about SAE Atlanta at our website, and the address is at the bottom of the screen there. It's www.saeatlanta.org, and you can sign up for a newsletter as well as become a member. And our events, we don't charge for them, and it's all volunteer work, but there is a small membership fee, and it's probably one of the best returning on investments, or at least one of the better ones that's out there. So thank you again, and everyone have a great evening. That concludes our webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.